A deer existed in myth that could outrun a flying arrow. This was the Ceryneian Hind, a creature of divine magic and impossible speed, sacred to the goddess Artemis herself. Its legend is woven into one of Hercules' most perplexing tasks, a labor that demanded not brute force, but patience and cunning. By the end of this story, you will understand why capturing this animal alive was a greater test of heroism than slaying any monster. We will uncover how a year-long chase tested a hero's limits and explore the tense confrontation with a powerful, angry goddess. What quality do you believe is most essential for a true hero to possess? To understand the hind, you must first know the goddess who claimed it. Artemis was no gentle deity of the moonlit woods. She was the divine huntress, a master of the bow whose arrows never missed their mark. Daughter of Zeus and sister to Apollo, she chose the wild, untamed spaces as her domain. She was the protector of young girls and all wild creatures, a paradox that defines her complex nature. She roamed the forests with a band of nymphs, sworn to eternal maidenhood and fiercely independent. Her symbols were the silver bow, the crescent moon crowning her head, and the creatures of the deep forest. This is why the Ceryneian Hind was so much more than just a fast deer. It was a living emblem of her power, a being touched directly by her divine will. To even pursue such an animal was to challenge the goddess herself. Artemis was known for her swift and terrible wrath against those who disrespected her or harmed her sacred charges. So when Hercules was ordered to capture her golden-horned hind, it was not merely a difficult task. It was a potential act of sacrilege that could bring a goddess's fury down upon the greatest of heroes. Hercules faced his labors not as a quest for glory, but as a desperate path to redemption. A fit of madness sent by the goddess Hera had caused him to commit a terrible act, and to atone, he entered the service of his cousin, King Eurystheus. The king, fearful of the hero's strength, devised a series of 12 seemingly impossible tasks. The first two were brutal confrontations, slaying a monstrous lion and a many-headed hydra. But the third labor was different. King Eurystheus, perhaps growing clever, ordered Hercules to capture the Ceryneian Hind alive and bring it to him. This command transformed the challenge entirely. It was no longer a test of pure strength against a monstrous foe. How do you use force against a creature you cannot even touch, one you are forbidden from harming? The hind was not a beast to be conquered with a club or an arrow. It was a sacred entity, a symbol of divine grace. To succeed, Hercules would have to outthink his prey, matching its otherworldly speed and cunning with his own profound patience and wit. This labor was a shift from brute force to a more profound, more delicate kind of heroism, setting the stage for a pursuit that would last an entire year. This creature was a living paradox, a marvel of divine contradiction. While the Ceryneian Hind was female, it bore a magnificent set of antlers, not of bone but of solid, shimmering gold. These were not just for show. They caught the sunlight like a beacon, a glittering crown that marked it as a being set apart from the natural world. Its hooves were not ordinary hooves either. They were forged of a mysterious, brazen material, harder than iron and gleaming like polished bronze. When it ran, its feet did not sink into the soft earth of the forest floor. They struck the ground with a metallic ring, kicking up sparks as it moved, a testament to its supernatural origin. Its coat was said to be a tapestry of the forest itself, dappled with sunlight and shadow, allowing it to blend into the woods one moment and shine like a celestial vision the next. Its speed, however, was its most defining trait. This was not the speed of a wolf or a horse. It was the speed of a fleeting thought, of light on water. Legends say it could run from one end of Greece to the other without ever tiring, its pace so swift it could outpace an arrow in flight. To even glimpse it was a rare event, a flash of gold and bronze that vanished before your mind could fully register what your eyes had seen. This was no simple animal to be tracked and caught. It was a streak of pure, divine energy given form, a challenge that would demand a year of a hero's life. So where could such a divine creature make its home? The golden-horned hind roamed the wild, beautiful lands of Ceryneia, a region in the ancient Peloponnese cradled by lush forests and rolling hills. This was not a harsh or threatening wilderness, but a place of profound serenity, a natural temple where sunlight filtered through dense canopies to dapple the soft, mossy earth. Crystal-clear streams cut through the valleys, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and the quiet sounds of undisturbed life. Artemis, as the guardian of the wild, would have chosen this specific sanctuary with purpose. It was a landscape that embodied her own spirit, untamed yet harmonious, a perfect refuge for a creature that was itself a walking piece of art. The hind was not hidden away in some dark, treacherous cavern. It lived in a paradise, a reflection of the goddess's ideal world, a place where the sacred and the natural existed as one. To enter these woods in pursuit of the hind was to walk into Artemis's own private domain, a fact that would weigh heavily on Hercules as he began his impossible task. The command from King Eurystheus was a trap of divine proportions. He demanded the Ceryneian hind be captured alive and brought to him without a single scratch upon its sacred hide. This single stipulation transformed a difficult hunt into a seemingly impossible puzzle. Think of the challenge. Hercules, a hero defined by his immense physical power, was now forbidden from using that power in any direct way. He could not strike it, he could not wound it, and he certainly could not kill it. How do you subdue a creature of divine magic without applying force? How do you catch the wind in your hands? The hind's supernatural speed meant that overwhelming it was out of the question. A net would be useless against something that moved like a beam of light. A pitfall trap would be outrun without a second thought. Any plan that relied on confining or injuring the animal was doomed to fail before it even began. But the physical impossibility was only half the danger. The greater risk was spiritual. To harm this deer was to directly insult Artemis, to violate a divine law of the wild. A single drop of the hind's blood spilled by his hand would not just mean failure. It would invite the immediate and unending wrath of a goddess whose arrows never missed. Hercules was caught between a king's impossible demand and a goddess' absolute protection. His only path to success lay not in strength, but in a quality rarely tested in his previous labors, a profound and enduring patience. He would have to become as relentless as the passage of time itself, pursuing a goal that always seemed to slip just beyond the horizon. For an entire year, the hero and the divine deer moved across the landscape of Greece in a silent, relentless dance. Hercules learned to move not with the thunderous steps of a warrior, but with the quiet persistence of the seasons. His pursuit carried him from the familiar woods of Arcadia, through rugged mountain passes, and into the cold, distant lands of the far north, a journey that mapped the very edges of the known world. He followed not a clear trail of hoof prints, but the barest signs, a flash of gold in the distant tree line, the fleeting echo of brazen hooves on stone. He slept under the stars and woke with the dawn, his focus never wavering. This was not a sprint, but a marathon of the spirit. He could not force a confrontation, so he settled in for a war of attrition, trusting that his own mortal endurance could, in some small way, match the hind's divine stamina. He was learning the land's rhythms, the secret paths of the wild, and the subtle language of the creature he hunted. The true test was not in catching the hind, but in the quiet, grinding resolve to keep following day after day, month after month, when any other person would have long since given up in despair. What kind of inner strength does it take to remain committed to a goal that constantly flees from you? It is the strength of patience, a slow burning fire that outlasts every fleeting spark. That golden flash of movement finally slowed along the banks of the river Ladon. After a year of relentless pursuit, the Ceryneian hind stood at the water's edge, its sides heaving, its divine energy spent by the endless chase. The river itself was a wide, placid barrier, its gentle current reflecting the overhanging trees. Here, the creature of impossible speed had run out of land, and Hercules saw his one and only chance. A direct lunge would only send the hind splashing into the water, risking injury and certain failure. He needed a perfect solution, a move of absolute precision. He raised his bow, and the scene must have seemed like a betrayal of his orders. Yet he did not aim a sharp arrow at its heart. Instead, he drew back the string and let fly a single, carefully calculated shot. His arrow flew not to pierce flesh, but to stitch a path between the hind's delicate legs, pinning its two front hooves together with a thud that threw up a spray of dirt and water. The hind stumbled, momentarily trapped not by a cage, but by its own surprise and the clever placement of the shaft. In that single, breathless instant, the hero closed the final distance. His hands, so often used for breaking and subduing, now moved with the utmost care as he gently lifted the sacred animal. He had used his greatest weapon not to harm, but to create a momentary hesitation, a split-second window to achieve the impossible without shedding a single drop of divine blood. But how exactly did he manage to lay hands on a creature of such divine speed? The ancient stories themselves offer different answers, a debate that has echoed through the centuries. One of the most enduring tales suggests that after his year-long chase, Hercules found the hind exhausted and sleeping in a sun-dappled grove. In this version, he did not use his bow at all. Instead, he moved with the silence of a shadow, carefully unfolding a strong, woven net. He cast it over the sleeping creature, ensnaring it before it could even startle awake. This method speaks to a hunter's ultimate patience, a victory won not through force but through perfect timing and stealth. It suggests a profound respect, a capture so gentle it barely disturbed the animal's rest. Yet another account insists upon the moment of brilliance we just witnessed at the river's edge. Here, he used his legendary skill with the bow not as a weapon but as a tool of precision. A single arrow, shot with impossible accuracy, pinned the hind's two front legs together against the soft earth. The shaft did not break the skin or draw a single drop of blood. It simply created a moment of immobility, a temporary tether of wood that allowed the hero to gently lift the sacred deer. Both methods achieve the same goal without harm, but their symbolism is distinct. The net represents the culmination of a silent, patient hunt, a capture that feels almost like a natural conclusion. The arrow, however, is a testament to a different kind of mastery, the application of a violent skill for a profoundly peaceful purpose. It shows a hero thinking on his feet, using his greatest strength in a way that honors the very spirit of his impossible task. Whether through the quiet net or the clever arrow, the outcome was the same. Hercules had finally succeeded, holding the living embodiment of a goddess's power in his arms. With the hind gently secured, Hercules began the long journey back to King Eurystheus. Yet the air around him grew heavy, charged with a sudden, chilling presence. A light, brighter and colder than the sun, materialized before him, and from it stepped the goddess Artemis, her silver bow in hand and her eyes blazing with righteous fury. At her side stood her twin brother, Apollo, his expression equally stern. The forest fell silent, every creature holding its breath. "You have dared to lay hands on what is mine," Artemis declared, her voice like cracking ice. "This hind is sacred to me, a creature under my direct protection. Explain this sacrilege, son of Zeus, before my arrow finds its home in your heart." Hercules did not cower or make a threatening move. Instead, he slowly set the hind down and bowed his head in a gesture of deep respect. He knew he stood on the edge of divine retribution. "Great Artemis," he began, his voice steady but humble, "I act not from disrespect or a desire for glory. I am bound by a sacred oath to atone for a grave mistake, serving King Eurystheus under the command of the Oracle of Delphi. Your sacred hind was the task set for me by the king himself. I was commanded to bring it to him alive, and I have taken the utmost care to ensure not a single hair on its hide has been harmed. My pursuit lasted a full year, and my capture was achieved without violence. I offer this not as an excuse, but as proof of my reverence for your power. Apollo, the god of truth, studied the hero intently, sensing no lie in his words. He turned to his sister, a silent communication passing between them. Hercules then made his plea directly to the heart of the goddess's values. The fault does not lie with my actions, but with the one who commanded them. King Eurystheus seeks to possess what is rightfully yours, to diminish your honor by placing your sacred symbol in his mortal hands. I am but the instrument of his impiety. In that moment, Hercules shifted from a trespasser to a witness against the king's arrogance. Artemis, still angry, looked at her hind, calm and unharmed in the hero's grasp. She saw the truth in his story, the patience of the year-long chase and the gentle capture. Her wrath softened, not out of forgiveness for the act, but from recognition of the hero's impossible position and his respectful handling of her charge. She allowed him to continue his journey to the king under one solemn condition. You may complete your labor and show the hind to Eurystheus, she decreed. But the moment he sets eyes upon it, you must release it. It will return to my sacred groves, free and untouched by his mortal pride. Hercules agreed without hesitation, his relief palpable. He had navigated the confrontation not with strength, but with truth and respect, turning a potential disaster into a negotiated peace. The true test was no longer the capture, but the delivery, a final act that would either fulfill his labor or seal his doom. Hercules stood before the divine twins, his fate balanced on the edge of an arrow. He did not plead for mercy with empty words, but presented his case with the clarity of a seasoned diplomat. He began by grounding his actions in a framework the gods themselves would respect, the sacred chain of command. Great Artemis, he explained, my will is not my own in this matter. I serve under a sacred oath of penance, a debt decreed by the oracle at Delphi herself. It is King Eurystheus, acting through that divine mandate, who set this labor upon me. His argument was brilliant in its simplicity. He reframed himself from a willing thief to a bound servant, a hero trapped by a higher law. This was not an excuse, but a statement of fact, shifting the blame for the sacrilege from his hands to the king's arrogant decree. He then provided irrefutable evidence of his own good faith. Look upon your hind, he urged, his voice steady. See that it is calm and completely unharmed. I pursued it for a full year, yet I never once raised my club or drew a blade. My capture was achieved without violence, through patience and a single, careful shot meant only to pause its flight. Every action was calculated to honor your sanctity while fulfilling my sworn duty. His final, masterful stroke was to reveal the king's true motive. Eurystheus does not seek this creature for its beauty or its speed. He seeks to possess a symbol of your power, to place your divine honor within his mortal grasp. I am merely the instrument of his impiety. In that moment, Hercules transformed the confrontation. He was no longer a trespasser to be punished, but a witness testifying against a greater offense. He appealed directly to Artemis's core values, her pride and her role as a protector. By proving his own reverence through his careful actions and framing the king as the true source of disrespect, he gave the goddess a path to justice that did not require his destruction. His diplomacy turned a potential tragedy into a negotiated peace, proving that a hero's greatest weapon can sometimes be his words. A hero's greatest test is not always in the capture, but in the release. Hercules entered the court of King Eurystheus, the magnificent hind held securely but gently in his powerful arms. Its golden antlers cast a soft, celestial glow across the throne room, a stark contrast to the mortal king's gilded but mundane surroundings. The sight was breathtaking, a piece of the divine brought into the heart of human power. Eurystheus stared, his eyes wide with a mixture of triumph and deep, gnawing fear. He had demanded the impossible, and here it was, alive and unharmed, proof of the hero's incredible prowess. But in that moment of victory, the king understood the terrible risk he had taken. He was not just looking at a rare animal, he was staring at the direct property of a wrathful goddess, an artifact of Artemis' power now resting in his hall. His command had been an act of supreme arrogance, and now, faced with the reality of it, he felt only the chill of divine displeasure. Hercules stood silently, allowing the weight of the moment to settle. He had fulfilled the letter of his labor. Now he would fulfill its spirit. Without a word of argument or a moment's hesitation, the hero turned and carried the hind back toward the palace entrance. He set the creature down upon the earth, and with a final, respectful touch, he set it free. The hind did not bolt in panic. It paused for a single heartbeat, a golden statue coming to life, and then it sprang away, a streak of light and grace returning to the wild. It vanished into the distant trees, leaving behind a silent court and a king who had been taught a profound lesson about the limits of mortal ambition. The labor was complete, the promise kept, and the sacred balance of the world restored. The Ceryneian Hind was far more than a simple quarry for a hero's labor. It was a living symbol, a breathing piece of theology that embodied the very essence of its divine mistress. Its golden horns did not signify worldly wealth, but a different kind of value entirely, the priceless quality of purity. In a world that was often harsh and untamed, this creature remained untouched by that harshness, a perfect emblem of innocence protected by divine will. Its untamable nature mirrored the wild spaces it called home, representing a world that existed beyond human control, a realm of raw, unspoiled beauty that answered only to the gods. The hind's incredible speed was not merely a physical trait. It was the very spirit of fleeting grace, the swift, beautiful moment in the forest that vanishes before you can fully grasp it, a reminder that some forms of beauty are meant to be witnessed, not possessed. This symbolism connects directly to Artemis herself, the eternal maiden. Just as the hind was a creature that could not be caught or held, Artemis represented a state of being that was self-sufficient and independent, free from the dominion of others. She was the protector of young women, safeguarding their transition into adulthood, just as she protected the wild creatures of the wood. The hind, in its vulnerable yet untouchable state, perfectly captured this dual role. It was a being to be revered and shielded, not hunted and conquered. To capture the hind was to momentarily hold this entire complex of ideas in your hands, to touch the concept of the sacred wild before it inevitably, and rightly, returned to its home. The myth of the Ceryneian Hind did not only live in stories, it was painted and sculpted into the very walls and vessels of ancient Greek life. On the curved surfaces of clay pots and vases, artisans captured the eternal chase between the hero and the divine deer. One common scene shows Hercules in his signature lion skin, his body coiled with tension, one hand outstretched as he closes in on the fleeing animal. The hind is always depicted in mid-leap, its powerful legs extended, those iconic golden antlers clearly distinguished in a darker, gleaming paint against its dappled coat. These were not just decorative images, they were narrative snapshots for a society where stories were shared aloud. A person drinking wine from such a cup would see the scene unfold in their hands, a constant reminder of the hero's endurance and the creature's impossible grace. The artists took care to show the hind not as a terrified animal, but as a majestic being, its escape seeming almost effortless against the hero's straining muscles. This visual contrast reinforced the central theme of the myth, the clash between relentless mortal effort and untouchable divine speed. Sculptures, though rarer, often focused on the hind itself, immortalizing it as a standalone object of beauty and religious significance. A small bronze statue might show the creature with its head turned, ears perked, forever captured in a moment of alert stillness just before flight. These artworks were how the average person visualized the story, shaping their understanding of a hero who succeeded through patience rather than pure force, and a sacred animal whose very image commanded reverence. Yet the legend of the hind did not only race through forests, it also galloped across the pages of ancient texts. Poets and storytellers, each with their own voice and purpose, took this core myth and wove it into their grand tapestries of verse. The lyric poet Pindar, for instance, sang of the creature's impossible speed, using its flight as a metaphor for fleeting victory and the sublime achievements of the athletes he celebrated. In his odes, the hind becomes more than an animal. It transforms into a symbol of that which is both beautiful and nearly unattainable, a prize that demands the very peak of human effort. Other writers, whose names are now lost to time but whose works are grouped into what scholars call the epic cycles, would reference the hind as a known wonder, a foundational element of the heroic world their listeners took for granted. These brief mentions in larger tales serve to build a consistent mythology, a shared universe where Hercules' labor was one famous episode in a wider tapestry of divine interaction. Some versions even embellished the story, perhaps giving the hind the power to speak or adding new layers of trickery to its escape. Each retelling was like a new artist painting the same majestic creature, some focusing on the drama of the chase, others on the shimmering beauty of the deer itself, and still others on the profound tension between mortal duty and divine law. These literary echoes ensured the Ceryneian hind was not forgotten, its legend refined and reshaped by every generation that passed the story down, proving that a truly powerful myth never stands still. This idea of a sacred animal, a creature intertwined with the divine, is not unique to the shores of ancient Greece. Across the world, human cultures have looked into the wild and seen not just beasts, but living symbols, messengers, and even manifestations of the gods themselves. The Celtic peoples of Europe, for instance, revered a powerful antlered god named Cernunnos, often depicted seated in a meditative pose, a torque in one hand and a ram-headed serpent in the other. His most striking feature was the magnificent set of stag's antlers crowning his head. Like Artemis's hind, the stag of Cernunnos was a symbol of the untamed forest, a creature of immense vitality and cyclical renewal. Its antlers, which are shed and regrown each year, represented death and rebirth, the endless turning of the seasons. Yet here we see a fascinating divergence. While the Ceryneian hind was a protected entity, an object of a chase that emphasized its separateness from humanity, the stag of Cernunnos was often shown as a more integral partner in the natural order. Cernunnos himself was a god of animals, fertility, and the underworld, a lord of life in all its phases. His connection to the stag was one of deep kinship, representing a balance between the hunter and the hunted, where the act of the hunt itself was a sacred exchange within the cycle of life, not a violation of it. Journeying to the mythologies of India, we encounter another kind of divine animal entirely, the wondrous Kamadhenu. This was not a wild creature of the woods, but a celestial cow, said to be the mother of all cows and a goddess in her own right. She could grant any wish to her owner and provided not just milk, but a never-ending stream of sustenance and abundance. Like the hind, Kamadhenu was a direct emanation of the divine, a physical form of a goddess's generosity. But her role was fundamentally different. The hind represented a sacredness that must be left alone, a beauty that exists beyond human utility. Kamadhenu, in contrast, embodied a sacredness that actively nourishes and sustains humanity. She was the ultimate provider, her very purpose to give. This contrast highlights a core tension in how different cultures perceive the divine in nature. Is the sacred something to be revered from a distance, protected from our touch as with Artemis's hind? Or is it a source of benevolent abundance, a partner in life meant to be embraced and cared for as with Kamadhenu? The Greek myth of the hind leans heavily into the first perspective, framing the encounter with the divine animal as a test of restraint and respect. It asks a profound question about our relationship with the natural world, a question that echoes far beyond the forests of Ceryneia. That ancient flash of gold and bronze did not vanish with the Greek myths. It found new forests to roam, its legacy leaping from crumbling temple friezes into the vibrant worlds of modern fantasy. The Ceryneian hind appears as a rare and magical creature in countless video games, often a prized objective for a player's quest. In these digital landscapes, it retains its defining traits of impossible speed and elusive beauty. A player might spend hours tracking it through a virtual forest, only to see it dart away in an instant, a direct echo of Hercules' own year-long frustration. Its inclusion is never just a simple monster hunt. Game designers use the hind to challenge a player's patience and cleverness, forcing them to think beyond brute force, much like the original myth intended. It becomes a symbol of a higher level of skill, a test of a true hero's worth in a new age of storytelling. This transformation from sacred animal to digital quarry shows how deeply the archetype of the untouchable, divine creature is embedded in our collective imagination. We still crave that challenge, that beautiful, fleeting goal that demands our very best. Fantasy literature has also embraced the hind, weaving its essence into new narratives. Authors reimagine it not just as a creature to be caught, but as a guardian of ancient magic or a key to unlocking a hidden world. In these stories, its golden antlers might be a source of powerful enchantment, or its protection might be the only thing holding back a spreading darkness. The hind shifts from being a passive object of a quest to an active, intelligent participant in the fate of its world. This modern reinterpretation speaks to our changing relationship with nature itself. Where the ancient Greeks saw a symbol of divine power to be respectfully avoided, we often project onto it a role as an endangered protector, a being whose survival is tied to the health of the entire ecosystem. The myth adapts, reflecting our own contemporary anxieties and hopes about the wild spaces we have left. Even the modern art world has drawn inspiration from this timeless form. Contemporary sculptors might create sleek, abstract interpretations of the hind from polished metal or reclaimed wood, capturing its essence of motion and grace without replicating its literal image. A painter might depict it not in a sun-dappled Greek grove, but fleeing through a surreal dreamscape or a neon-lit city, posing questions about whether sacred can exist in our modern world. These artistic explorations are not merely illustrations of an old story. They are conversations with it. They ask what the hind means now. Is it a symbol of a nature we have pushed to the edges of our consciousness? Is it the fleeting spark of creativity itself, always just out of reach? The fact that artists continue to engage with this specific creature out of the thousands in mythology proves the enduring power of its core idea, a beauty that is both magnificent and perpetually out of reach, urging us to follow. But where do such enduring legends truly begin? Could the shimmering vision of the Ceryneian hind have been born from a real, earthly creature glimpsed by ancient hunters? Some archaeologists and historians propose a fascinating theory, suggesting the myth may be a cultural echo of a time when Europe was home to truly gigantic deer. The most compelling candidate is the Irish elk, a magnificent beast that roamed the continent long before the rise of Greek civilization. This was no ordinary deer. It stood over 2 meters tall at the shoulder, and its antlers were not merely golden in metaphor, but were colossal racks of solid bone spanning an incredible 3.5 meters from tip to tip. For a prehistoric people encountering such an animal, its appearance would have been nothing short of supernatural. The sheer scale of those antlers, catching the light like a forest of polished branches, could easily have been remembered and exaggerated over centuries of storytelling, transforming into the legend of golden horns. This theory connects the myth to a tangible, prehistoric reality, a memory of a time when the world was filled with wonders that blurred the line between the natural and the divine. Yet the Irish elk was a creature of power and bulk, not the ethereal speed described in the myth. so perhaps the inspiration was more layered, a fusion of different memories. Other, more agile but still impressive deer species, now extinct in the region, could have contributed their grace and swiftness to the story. The myth of the hind might be a beautiful tapestry woven from threads of different truths, a cultural memory of the most magnificent animals our ancestors ever witnessed, their physical forms fading from the world but their awe-inspiring essence crystallizing into legend. This idea transforms the story from a simple fantasy into a profound echo of a lost world, a whispered secret passed down through generations about a time when the boundary between the real and the magical was far, far thinner. That golden-horned creature was far more than a character in a story. It was a vital part of ancient spiritual life. In the quiet sanctuaries dedicated to Artemis, the myth of the Ceryneian Hind served as a powerful, living lesson. For the people who worshipped the goddess, this tale was not just entertainment. It was a sacred text that taught them how to interact with the divine. The central message was one of profound respect for the boundaries set by the gods. The hind embodied everything that was sacred to Artemis, the wild, the pure, and the untamable. By following the story of Hercules, worshippers learned a crucial moral principle that some things, no matter how beautiful or desirable, are not meant to be possessed by mortals. His success did not come from conquest, but from his careful refusal to harm the animal and his ultimate act of releasing it. This narrative reinforced a core tenet of Greek religion: hubris, or arrogant pride, leads to disaster, while reverence and humility please the gods. The myth showed that even the greatest hero must bow to divine will, a lesson every citizen was expected to heed. How do you teach an entire society to respect the power of nature and the authority of the gods? You give them a story where the hero wins by letting go. This was the ethical compass provided by the legend of the hind, guiding behavior and shaping a collective respect for the sacred spaces of the wild. In the groves where Artemis was honored, this story would have been recited during festivals, perhaps during the Broronea, a major festival where young girls, dressed in saffron robes, enacted the part of bear cubs to honor the goddess before marriage. Here, the tale of the hind would resonate deeply. These girls were on the cusp of adulthood, leaving the protected, wild state of childhood, much like the hind itself, which existed in a state of protected innocence. The story taught them, and the whole community, that the transition into the civilized world of marriage and city life should not mean the destruction of the wild, but a respectful acknowledgement of its separate and sacred power. The myth was a ritual in itself, a spoken ceremony that renewed a community's pact with the natural world, reminding everyone that the forests and their inhabitants were under the protection of a goddess who demanded their respect. Hercules returned from his year-long quest a changed hero. This labor carved away at his reliance on raw power, forcing a profound inner transformation. Before the hind, his victories were written in the language of force: the crushing of a lion's skull, the severing of a hydra's heads, but you cannot wrestle the wind. The only way to capture a creature of pure speed was to become its shadow, to move with the same relentless patience as the turning earth. This taught him strategy of a different kind, a strategy of endurance. He learned to read the land not as an obstacle, but as a map of the creature's habits, to interpret the faintest signs and silences. This was not the strategy of a battlefield, but of a hunter who understands his prey is sacred. And that was the most crucial lesson of all: respect for the divine. By choosing to capture the hind without harming it, he acknowledged a higher law. He showed that even the son of Zeus was bound by the rules of the gods, that some forms of power demand reverence, not challenge. This newfound respect was then tested in the fiery crucible of diplomacy when he faced Artemis. In that moment, he could have stood on his pride, but instead he chose humility and truth. He presented his case not as a defiant warrior, but as a servant of a higher purpose, skillfully redirecting the goddess's wrath toward the true source of the insult, King Eurystheus. He learned that words could be a more powerful weapon than a club, that a well-reasoned appeal could disarm a deity where 1,000 arrows would fail. This labor was his true education, forging in him the qualities of a complete hero: patience to pursue an impossible goal, strategy to achieve it without violence, respect for powers greater than himself, and the diplomatic skill to navigate the perilous world of the gods. The man who released the hind was far wiser than the one who began the chase. We can trace the hind's flight like a golden thread stitched across the map of ancient Greece. The chase likely began in the rugged highlands of Mount Artemisius in Arcadia, a peak sacred to the goddess herself. This was not a random starting point, it was the heart of her domain, a place where her presence was felt in every whisper of the wind through the pines. From that holy mountain, the path of the pursuit unfolded, a sprawling loop through the wild Peloponnese. The hind would have darted through the dense forests of Arcadia, a land known for its isolated, rustic beauty and its deep connection to the god Pan. This terrain was a maze of hidden valleys and shadowy groves, perfect for a creature that seemed to be part of the landscape itself. The journey then pushed north, possibly skirting the edges of the fearsome Erymanthian Mountains, a place Hercules would later visit for another of his perilous labors. This was a land of harsh beauty and danger, a test of endurance for both hunter and hunted. But the most critical point on this map, the place where the chase finally ended, was the river Ladon. This was no ordinary river. It was renowned in myth for its serpentine, gentle beauty, its clear waters meandering through lush valleys. Some legends even say it was loved by the goddess Demeter. For the hind, this serene river became an unexpected barrier, a peaceful trap that finally halted its divine momentum. All these locations circle back to the creature's namesake home, the region of Ceryneia, a land of rolling hills and forests that provided the hind's eternal sanctuary. This was not a random path. Each location was a node of spiritual power, a place already heavy with myth before Hercules ever set foot there. His pursuit was not just across land, but through a landscape dense with meaning, a geography of the gods where every mountain and river had a story. To follow the hind was to run through the very pages of a living atlas, where the land itself was a character in the divine drama. Artemis was not a passive observer in this drama. She stood as a powerful, active antagonist, a divine force Hercules had to confront and persuade, not conquer. This direct challenge from a female deity reveals a complex truth about ancient Greek society. In a world where women had limited public power, their goddesses could be formidable and fiercely independent. Artemis, like Athena and Hera, possessed authority that often eclipsed that of mortal men. She was a guardian of boundaries, both literal and social, and her wrath was a tangible force in the world. By placing her in direct opposition to the archetypal male hero, the myth acknowledges a reality where female power was not just present but dominant in certain spheres. The wild, the hunt, and the transition of young girls into womanhood were all domains ruled by Artemis's absolute will. Hercules could not simply take what he wanted from her realm. He had to negotiate, to show respect, and ultimately to submit to her condition for release. His victory was not in defeating her, but in successfully navigating her power without being destroyed by it. This narrative framework provided a space for ancient Greeks to explore the concept of female agency in a way that was both awe-inspiring and safely contained within the divine realm. It asked the audience to consider what happens when unquestioned male strength meets unyielding female authority. The answer, in this case, was that respect and diplomacy were the only paths to success. Its speed was a form of divine language, a statement about the nature of the sacred. The Ceryneian Hind did not just run, it flowed across the land like a thought, like light on water, an expression of a reality just beyond human reach. This impossible velocity transforms the creature from a simple animal into a living symbol of the unattainable sublime. It represents those perfect ideals, those divine gifts and beautiful goals that shimmer in our vision, compelling us to pursue them, yet perpetually fleeing our grasp. Think of the most brilliant idea, the one that dances at the edge of your consciousness but vanishes the moment you try to pin it down with words. That is the speed of the hind. Or consider a moment of perfect happiness, a feeling of pure connection with the world or with another person, a state so beautiful you wish you could live inside it forever, yet it is inherently fleeting, impossible to hold onto. That, too, is the hind, a golden moment you can witness and cherish but never truly capture or own. The ancient Greeks understood this deeply. Their myths are filled with these elusive ideals. Think of Eros, the god of love, who is always depicted as a winged boy, his arrows striking unpredictably, his essence being the very capriciousness of desire. You cannot command love to appear, you can only hope to be struck by its arrow and appreciate its presence while it lasts. The hind is a similar concept but grounded in the physical world. It is the beauty of the wild itself, the untouched grove, the pristine mountain peak, the silent forest at dawn. These are places of profound power and peace, but the moment we try to possess them, to build our homes there and claim them as our own, their essential magic begins to fade. We tame them, and in doing so, we destroy the very quality that made them sacred in the first place. The hind's speed is a divine mechanism to protect that quality, to ensure that this particular form of beauty remains forever wild, forever free, forever just beyond the fence of human ownership. Hercules' year-long chase, then, becomes a powerful metaphor for the human condition itself. We spend our lives pursuing our own golden-horned hinds, whether they are dreams of artistic perfection, quests for absolute truth, or the desire for a lasting, flawless peace. The pursuit itself is what defines us, what forges our patience and resilience. The myth suggests that the true value is not in the capture, but in the transformation we undergo during the chase. We become more patient, more observant, more strategic, more respectful of the forces greater than ourselves. And the ultimate lesson, the one Hercules learns when he finally releases the hind back to Artemis, is that some of the most beautiful things in existence are not meant to be kept. Their purpose in our lives is to inspire the pursuit, to make us better by striving for them, and to teach us the grace of letting go when the time comes. To hold on would be to break the magic, to turn a divine symbol into a mere trophy. The hind had to run so that the ideal of the wild, the pure, and the free could forever remain a beckoning, beautiful possibility. That golden flash of divine speed was not meant to be confined to the forests of earth alone. Ancient storytellers looked to the heavens and saw the same myths playing out in the patterns of the stars, a celestial tapestry where heroes, monsters, and sacred animals lived forever. While there is no constellation named the Ceryneian Hind itself, its spirit races through the night sky in the form of a nearby constellation, Lepus the Hare. Positioned perpetually at the feet of the great hunter Orion, Lepus is forever fleeing, a shimmering echo of that which is perpetually pursued but never quite caught. The connection is profound. Just as Hercules spent a year chasing the hind, Orion the hunter eternally chases the hare across the dome of the sky, a cycle that never ends. This astronomical imagery perfectly captures the core theme of the myth, the beautiful, frustrating, and ultimately noble pursuit of something that exists just beyond our grasp. It transforms a single story into a universal principle written in starlight. But why would the Greeks place a hare there instead of the more magnificent hind? The answer may lie in the nature of myth itself, which is fluid and adaptable. Different regions had their own versions of these stories, and the constellations we know today are a compromise, a map of the most popular tales. Lepus serves the same narrative function, a swift, elusive creature that defines the hunter by its very ability to evade him. The night sky became the ultimate storybook, a way to ensure these vital lessons about patience, pursuit, and the sacredness of the wild were never forgotten. Every clear night, any person could look up and see the eternal hunt, a silent reminder of the balance between human ambition and the elusive wonders of the world. This practice of mythic astronomy was not unique to Greece. Cultures across the globe projected their most important stories onto the stars. The Egyptians saw their gods in the planets. The Polynesians used constellations for navigation, weaving tales of ancestors and creators into the star paths they followed across the vast ocean. For the Greeks, placing the essence of the Ceryneian Hind in the sky was a way to sanctify the story, to lift it from the earthly realm and grant it a permanent divine residence. It asks us a silent question every time we gaze upward. What are the golden-horned ideals we are chasing in our own lives, and does their true value lie in the capture or in the person we become during the long, starlit pursuit? From its sacred origins in Artemis's groves to its year-long flight across the wild heart of Greece, the journey of the Ceryneian Hind is an epic of profound contrast. It was a chase that redefined heroism, proving that true strength lies not in the power to break, but in the wisdom to restrain. Hercules' greatest victory was his gentle capture and his ultimate act of release, a powerful lesson in respecting boundaries far greater than our own ambitions. This myth endures because it speaks to a timeless truth about our relationship with the natural world and the divine. It reminds us that some forms of beauty are not meant to be owned, only revered, and that the pursuit of an ideal can forge more character than its possession ever could. The hind's legacy is a golden thread connecting us to a world view where nature was alive with sacred meaning, and heroism was measured by patience and reverence. What mythical creature from ancient lore captures your imagination? Share your favorite in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this journey into the heart of myth, subscribe for more tales from the ancient world.